NFKD here for another edition of Bookstr Business. I'm joined by author Vail Henry. She wrote this book, which you can see behind us. How you doing, Vail?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Sure. And the title of your book is World One. What is World One, Vail?
Actually, World One in the novel is the name that they gave to this. It's our tangible world that involves flesh and skin and, uncut grass at times, as opposed to the digital worlds that have more or less overtaken life as people tend to live it.
So a lot of the themes that you touch on in the book is hypothetical. What could happen in our digital world?
Yes.
As time goes on. So it's something that we don't talk about enough, is how technology is fundamentally changing the way we live.
It is. And I think these are conversations that we need to have because there are changes upon us now, but we need to think about where we're heading.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even now, just in the past 5 years, it's hard to imagine where we were then and now. We kind of lose track of progress, don't we?
We get lost in it. It's very easy to be part of the world that we're living in. People are magnificent at adaptation. And sometimes that's a danger. I know it's a survival mechanism, but it's also something that introduces a certain degree of risk, because once we get used to something, we don't understand what we've left behind very well.
So, technology, in the book, what happens?
What happens? Very similar to what we're seeing right now. People are enamored of their digital worlds. They're living even more intensely in VR. They're living in digital realms that they build for pleasure. Their work has become immersive in digital culture, and it has changed the way they're living. It has changed their economics. It has changed their politics. It has changed the things that they want in their lives. And so this renegade group of people comes through and they try to change things back, or to wake people out of that, or to change ideas. And the book's about what happens to them.
Every good story has a renegade. Why are these people resisting? Why can't they just embrace this digital world? It's not as great as everyone thinks, is it?
Well, it's not always as great as, there's always another way. There's always another perspective to be had. And I think that what makes cultures strong, what makes anything strong, is diversity. It's diversity of opinion, diversity of worldview, diversity of ideas. And so it's always the risk of the monoculture, whether it's a crop or whether it's societal notions.
But in modern times, monoculture equals efficiency.
And big profits.
Of course. Tell us a little bit about that, because we were talking about this off camera before. So what is the world like? So I wake up in this hypothetical world that you've constructed for this book.
And your home is nothing like it is right now.
What's it like then?
Imagine yourself living in the cross between a studio apartment and a 7-Eleven. Right now we are so lucky to have grocery delivery services and all these other things, the convenience of many services to make our lives easier and to help keep us at home. Well, this has kind of gone one step wild too far, where the products have the RFID chips in them and the products are placed in your home so that when you take them off the shelf and use them, that's when you purchase them. Point of sale is your home. You live in the store. What better opportunity for companies to make money than to actually position their unsold products within arm's reach of you, especially when you are a captive audience, because all you want to do all day is be in your sim and do your job on the sim and play in your VR reality, and you don't really leave your space.
So physically the world is much more confined than it is right now.
Very, very condensed, yes.
But we experience and we live all within our home, I guess.
I suppose, but it's really interesting. You say the world is, and that's why I named this book what I did. World 1, perhaps things are more confined, but True World 2 and the other realms that we describe in there are expansive. They have room for anything people want to be. And so which world matters to you? Because if World 1 doesn't matter to you, if you are more interested in the digital realms, and you have a wonderful life there where you own, 7 multicolored ponies and acres and acres and acres of sim space, maybe you're very satisfied. And is that okay? I mean, is that an acceptable way to live?
Well, we're already dealing with that reality, Vail. A lot of people live their lives out on social media.
They do.
Is that real? There's another person on the other end, and this is very valid for your book as well.
Yes. It's real to the people who are doing it. I would say that we probably simultaneously live in a lot of different worlds. And the conversations that I'm trying to start with World 1 are really more like, are we happy with the decisions that we're making? Are these decisions helping to integrate our worlds or separating us? And what do we want out of each world that we decide to become part of? So, interesting questions, but these are conversations that people should be having. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to put this book out, and one of the reasons I named it what I did, is to call attention to the fact that we do have a lot of different worlds going on all at once, and we need to be talking about that.
So Kimberly thinks it's an amazing idea, and I agree. That's the first thing I told you.
Thank you, Kimberly.
This is a conversation piece that I think of in my head a lot of time when I'm walking home. When I'm actually disconnected from this, is when I start thinking about that. What type of effect is modern life having on my real life, on my authentic life, we'll call it?
Okay.
So do your renegades wake up and say, oh my God, none of my life is real?
The renegades are actually more disconnected from digital worlds, and there's a spectrum in there, just as there is in any group of people. Some of them are panicked and potentially traumatized by the amount of digital immersion that everyone around them is going through, and they're having a real hard time connecting with other people. Others of them are definitely taking advantage of people being predictable, and certainly can get them further down the road in some ways.
So one of the most interesting questions I had for her off camera, and she said, wow, we need to talk about this. Where does religion, tradition, culture, spiritualism go in this modern hyper-connected world?
Where it's always been. It doesn't leave. Religion and spirituality is another worldview, and it's still with us. And actually there's a second story arc in World 1 that addresses that. There's a whole other world of spirituality, not of any one defined spiritual path. It's a fictional spirituality that was invented for this. But what parts of that spiritual world that people live in and prioritize are helping them, and what parts are holding them back, and what does it cause their allegiances to be, and how does that change them as people?
So one of my jobs here, the reason I'm here today, and I didn't tell you this off camera, is because I'm the spokesperson for a financial literacy nonprofit, and they put on this show. What happens in the future? Are consumers empowered? You said they didn't even own their own homes.
They don't own their own homes. They're not interested in owning their own homes. They're interested in having experiences that they like.
But are they economically empowered?
What is economic empowerment? If you have the no, I would say they're not, but they're not concerned about economic empowerment. They're economically empowered in digital realms, and it is an extreme...
But is that real, Vail?
To them, it is, because many of the characters in this book believe their allegiance, their first membership, is not to World 1. It's to True World 2. It's to some other virtual experience. And so they are, in those realms, very wealthy. And if they're not wealthy in other realms, it doesn't matter to them as much. And is there a word of caution in that? Is that maybe something that can free people to have more happiness and enjoy that sense of prosperity? There's a question here. Is prosperity even something that is only available in World 1? Or can there be prosperity that has a more intellectual, cognitive nature with no tangible counterpart?
So what happens, Vail, to relationships in this? Because a lot of times, like you and I met in real life right now, we formed a bond. Even before we get on camera, that's kind of one of my bago tricks as a journalist. How does this work in this hypothetical world that you've created in this book?
It heavily addressed in there. So in terms of initial relationships, people definitely relate to each other over the Sims. They have people that they're gaming with. They have coworkers that they maybe never see in person, but they're working with them and interacting with them every day. There is a romance that goes on for a time in the book over the Sim exclusively. And if you read the back cover text, I'm not spoiling it too much, one of the people in there makes a very conscious decision to never meet the other person in real life. And the reasons for that. There's also touches upon what death means. Relationships, Sometimes people die. What does death mean when the relationship was digital, and what is the legacy that that leaves behind?
Is there singularity? Are you able to continue living digitally?
Yes, actually, that is part of it.
So tell us, for people who don't know what singularity is and whatnot, because that's something that, Black Mirror, if you've seen that series, addressed it. Yeah, it's the idea of living forever digitally, is that correct?
Yes, so it's terrifying, actually. It's one of the points in the book that just terrified me when I was writing it, because there are these worlds. So take this world, True World 2. There are people and players, and they can choose to make legacy accounts so that when their physical body dies, they have so much automation going on that their character can continue to live and even can continue to thrive, because they have automated so many business procedures and digital trades and everything else that they actually have a self-sustaining economy all to themselves. And so they can keep this going. But then what happens as the world has more and more legacy members and starts running out of space, and it's not as attractive to living members to still be there?
Interesting. The dead people take over. The ghosts of Christmas past takes over.
No zombies.
No zombies.
No zombies.
Different genre. So let's come back to today. And
Okay.
one of our audience comments is, technology is changing our world as it is.
Yes.
So we're already on the path to some sort of outcome like the one you described
Yes.
in this book. And what are the little clues that we're getting in our daily life right now?
I think largely that people are spending so much of their time online. People are priding themselves on digital accomplishments. People are even sometimes their avatars, people's profile pictures or things they use. Sometimes they use things that they want to be, or pictures that look the way they want to look and not necessarily how they look in real life. And to some people, the art of the perfect selfie is more important than how they actually look on a random Tuesday when they're walking out of their house.
So, funny enough, we ordered sushi last night at the office, and it came in Instagrammable boxes, and I can't tell you how many.
No way.
I didn't.
That was brilliant.
I'm over 30, so I'm like, oh, nice box. Yum, 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 yum. But all the young people, including our producer, click.
Oh my gosh.
So what's real and what's not?
Oh, that was a brilliant business idea.
Oh, no. The box was, those boxes have to cost 50 cents a piece.
Yeah.
But it's extremely Instagrammable, and it says, rolled with love.
Rolled with love.
But so we already see this in our, what is real and what is not? What is an authentic experience and what is not? If one of my friends from Colombia told me she's traveling to Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe, and she goes, well, I said, I want to see pictures. She said, follow my Instagram. If I've seen those pictures, have I experienced it?
To some extent you have. Interesting, very similar question is, why should a person be limited to looking the way that their DNA made them? Is it more authentic to be able to project a light screen over yourself and be able to look a different way? Be able to look like, a velociraptor. Be able to look like anything that you want.
Oh my God, it blows up identity. So the future has no identity. It's like we're all just a blank slate and we get to choose what we're like.
It is referenced in there. And the legal problems that there's legal and logistical problems definitely ensue. A little bit of chaos.
But even now we've seen, and this relates to today, because Facebook just announced that they want to create a more authentic social network, and they're changing the rules for what appears in your newsfeed, and they're favoring more human-to-human contact. So even the big technology giants are catching on to the fact that a lot of our interactions are not human-to-human anymore. They're human-to-robot, they're human-to-vendor, they're human-to-media company, etc. Right. So we're already recognizing that this is a growing problem. Can we control this, or is this just an eventuality?
I actually have a great deal of faith in people, and I don't know what the world is really going to do, but I believe that we all have an intrinsic drive to connect with other human beings in some way, and that sometimes technology is so sexy, we get lured into it, but we often come back to that, I want to connect to another human being, and for that reason, I really have faith that people are going to come back and find ways to reconnect with what is meaningful to them. Maybe in waves. Maybe it's like a spiral that we kind of come closer and closer to but never quite hit it.
So, tell me, what motivated you to write the book? You were telling me you had a series of short stories at first?
I had a series of short writings, and I decided that I wanted to bind them in with an overarching storyline, and I did that for the first draft of this back in like 2010. But what happened on the third or fourth rewriting is that the individual writings didn't have the power. They didn't address whatever message was trying to come through me. I really feel like this book kind of wrote itself out of conversations with dozens and dozens of people, and staring at my navel late at night and doing all just all manner of ideas. But there were concerns about the way the world was changing. There were ideas about the economics, because I love economics, and how things may shift in our lives. And those are the story points and the juiciness that got built into the overarching story that the individual pieces of writing lacked. And so at the end of the day, I mean, they just fell out. And what I was left was with this story that I never intended to write. And it took me 6 years to understand what I was writing about. And once I figured it out, I loved it. And I think that it's important and powerful for people to talk about, because I think a lot of people have the same questions and we want someone to talk to about it. Again, going back to desire for people to connect with one another.
So one of the things I focus on, Vail, is the future of work. And we touched a little bit about that, on that. What is it like in this digital world? What is work like?
Work is there's almost a caste. If you have a digital job, a full virtual job that you don't leave home for, you're good. But if you are one of these poor people who...
So remote work is everything?
Everything. And if you don't have a remote job, you are a worse class of person. The people who actually have to try to drive a vehicle on the degrading roads that is not a job to be proud of anymore.
So wait, physical infrastructure is falling apart.
Physical infrastructure is falling apart because why people are not interested in pushing the government to keep up with it. So why would the government keep up with it?
And we talked about that. I forgot to bring that up. Where is governance at? Public policy, etc.
It's dire. It's really dire because the government will respond, ideally, to the people. At least that's what we're all continuing to hope. And so when you have a people who are not interested in World One anymore, they're not interested in this, they're interested in their digital lives, they don't ask too much from the government. They're really easy to govern. And for that reason, a lot of things have fallen apart. Budgets have flown out the window and been decreased, and it leaves this gaping hole in economics where the government isn't providing services that actually the people really do need, they just don't value. And so it leaves this wonderful opportunity for, guess who, to come in and make a killing on
the
profits.
Private sector, of course.
Private sector. And so all of a sudden, we've got the opportunity for profit because the government isn't doing its job because the people don't really ask it to.
Are some of the best jobs with these corporations?
Oh, of course they are. Of course they are.
We already live in that reality. I would love to work for Amazon. That's like my dream job, having this video on Amazon Prime Video. So it's become like, well, we're already like that, but it's even more so.
It's even more so.
Wow. So what's your advice for budding authors before we leave?
Write all the time. Write, and if it's bad, that's okay, just write. There's always another way around, and give it to a lot of mean people to read, because mean people will tell you the truth about how your first draft was.
Did you feel like it was hard to tie up all the loose ends in such a complicated world that you created?
It almost did it itself. I had a lot of moments where I exploded with joy because I was writing the story and the story arc was not coming together, and I had no idea how to make it to come together. And then the solution would hit me. And I'm sure every other writer out there knows the experience of jumping up and down like a maniac in your living room, crying and laughing, and then rushing to the notebook to write it down before you forget all of it. But I definitely had some of those. So before I leave you, again, World One by Vail Henry. You can see the big book behind me. Pretty cover. I like it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for coming on Bookstr Business.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week, same time. Bye.